Great. Hello, welcome everyone. This is the International Peace Coalition. My name is Anastasia Battle. I'll be your moderator today, as well as Dennis Small and Dennis Speed. This is the 109th meeting that we've had in a row, and I'd like to thank all of the veteran participants of the International Peace Coalition, as well as new people who are joining us today for the first time. Thank you for doing that. I want to encourage everyone to take a moment to share the invitation to your friends, your networks, and get as many people onto this meeting as possible. As I'm sure you're all aware that the danger of thermonuclear war has hit levels that were probably unimaginable to most of us. And today is the day of really a declaration of independence. Today should be the day that everyone declares their independence from empire, from oligarchy, and from evil. And we are having a good effect, I believe, in being able to pull people together. I like to remind everyone why we started this forum 109 weeks ago, that we wanted to pull people together, the peace movement, people who are diplomats, representatives of organizations, and concerned citizens, pull everyone together of many different philosophies and languages and cultures to really discuss how do we create true peace in the world. And you'll see today we have a number of people lined up who are going to be discussing that. So with that, I'd like to open up the floor for Helga Tsapp-LaRouche, who is the founder of the Schiller Institute and the initiator of the International Peace Coalition. Please go ahead, Helga.
Well, thank you, Anastasia, and hello to all of you. As you say, the cloud and Damocles sword of a potential global war is not removed. There are some updates I can report about in the Middle East, where I think as a consequence of the behavior of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iran has now suspended their cooperation with them, and they also have basically issued a ban on the entry of Grossi, the head of the IEA, to enter Tehran. The Iranian government, however, felt it was necessary to state that that does not mean that they will abandon the non-proliferation treaty. And I think this is very important, because obviously, the possibility of false flag and fake news reports is manifold. Now, the other major news from the Middle East, obviously, is that President Trump announced that he is now pursuing a 60-day ceasefire with Hamas in Gaza. And there are statements both from the Egyptian government and Qatar, who act as mediators to Hamas, reporting that Hamas basically says that they will do everything on their part to act in the most responsible way to bring an end to this crisis about. Now, that could look good, but unfortunately, Netanyahu put out a statement saying that this will change nothing in his intention of ending the Hamas, eliminate them to the end. Now, that does not sound like a predisposition to agree to the ceasefire, and it remains to be seen who wins out. President Trump trying to have the ceasefire or Netanyahu trying to ignore it and continue with this ugly operation in Gaza. So, I think, I'm not very optimistic about the outcome of this, but naturally, President Trump would have the means to put his foot down, and it remains to be seen if he is willing to do that. Now, concerning Ukraine, there the update is that the Pentagon basically stopped various weapon deliveries to Ukraine with the argument that their stockpiles are running low and that the Pentagon has to make an inventory to check what is their actual situation. Naturally, then you had the more than 2-hour discussion between President Trump and President Putin. I think they discussed all major issues and announced that they will keep their discussion channel open, which is for sure a good thing, because only if the leaders of the two most powerful nuclear powers are in communication is there any kind of safety net, if one can call it that way. And it is not unimportant that also President Macron had a almost 2-hour discussion with Putin after 3 years of interruption. And that obviously reflects that at least one element of the coalition of the willing, namely the French part, is not rock solid, but obviously Macron felt the need to, at least make a baby step in the direction of diplomacy. How that plays out in terms of the policies of the coalition of the willing obviously remains to be seen. Now, there is right now a whole bunch of initiatives from China and the EU in preparation of an EU-China summit later in the year. Wang Yi was in Brussels. He met with von der Leyen. He was in Belgium meeting with the government there and also in Berlin. And in the discussion with Kaja Kallas, who is otherwise one of the worst war hawks, he told her quite bluntly that China does not want to see a defeat in Russia, because they assume that if Russia is defeated in Ukraine, that China would be the next target, which is a first time that I know that any Chinese leader would have said such a blunt language, and I think it is quite important. Now, the situation in Germany remains utterly bad. Not only do we have a chancellor who is really a dyed-in-the-wool anti-Russian, anti-communist of dimensions, which is hard to match, and it is no surprise that Jens Spahn, who is now the faction leader of the CDU, basically is demanding that Germany should acquire nuclear weapons. Obviously Germany, who according to Merz wants to become a military great power, it wants to become the strongest army in Europe, will not be a great power unless Germany has nuclear weapons. But given the history of Germany, I think all the neighbors in Europe are pretty horrified about such an idea. Now, Merz felt compelled to roll back a little bit by saying, that he will pursue the nuclear participation with the Americans. But I think that one can assume that Merz would really like to go in this direction if the circumstances would allow it. Now, there is a very sharp statement by Thomas Röper, who is the head of a publication issued from Moscow called Anti-Spiegel. And this Thomas Röper has been put together with Alina Lipp on a list of Germans who are banned to re-enter Germany. Now that's, they used the trick by using, this is obviously against the German law and constitution, and they used the trick using a degree by the European Union to accomplish the same thing, but it is quite a scandal because everybody understands that this was meant as a huge signal to all journalists who are critical of the present NATO narrative, what could happen to them. Now, what Röper has published is quite amazing. He made a comparison between the EU Rearm Europe policy and Hitler's memorandum, which he wrote in 1936 to Hermann Göring, where he warned Göring that the Soviet Union was preparing an invasion of Europe and that this would happen within 5 years. Now, he says, if you then read what basically Germany is saying, that, Germany should be ready for a war against Russia in 4 years. Rutte, the NATO General Secretary, says NATO should be prepared for a war with Russia in 5 years. Pistorius said this war is likely to happen in 2029. There can unfortunately not be any doubt that there are such parallels in the formulations and obviously also in the thinking. Now, the only difference Röper underlines is that Hitler called for the German people to be kriegsfähig, and Pistorius wants them to be kriegstüchtig, which is a semantic, just a little game play with words, but it essentially has no difference in the meaning. Now, I think it is also extremely noteworthy that in London there took place just now a discussion in basically the in an organization called Committee for Academic Freedom. Apparently, there is still such a thing of the King's College in London. And the title of the seminar was Ukraine War Provoked by Western Policy. And the people in the discussion in the panel were Tony Brenton, former British ambassador to Russia, Lawrence Friedman, Robert Skidelsky, and John Love. And it is quite amazing. The speech, which was then given, basically discusses in great detail and, I must say, for the most part, accuracy of how the promises given to the Soviet Union at the end of the Cold War, that if they would agree to have NATO incorporate all of Germany, including East Germany, that, however, there would be no NATO expansion, not one inch to the west. And then quite correctly, he says this was not written down, but it was given by, this promise was mentioned and repeated by everybody, by Kohl, by Genscher, by Baker, and many other people, about which the documentation is easily available if people want to research it. There are many American libraries, private libraries, the National Archive, the Gorbachev Library, and many other places where one can find the original documents which document that indeed was the situation, absolutely. And then he goes further in the history of, how the NATO expansion started to happen in 1999. At the same time, the Kosovo war demonstrated that NATO was not a defensive alliance, but rather an offensive one. And then the further NATO expansions, all together 6 up to now. And he also quotes extensively all the Russian experts who had warned down the road that this would cross all red lines and they shouldn't do it. George Kennan saying this is the most fatal mistake of the West in the post-Cold War period, quoting Dmitry Trenin, quoting Bill Burns, and so forth and so on. So I find this remarkable and noteworthy because in Germany, you could, in the past several months, risk to be fined with money, fines, or even, have jail sentences threatening if people would basically say anything like that. So I find it very good and encouraging that at least in London, of all places, such a discussion took place, and hopefully it will protect people from now on to have these kinds of repressions if they dare to speak what actually happened in history. And I think the historic truth is important because without the repeated behavior of the West, the sponsoring of the Maidan coup in 2014, the betrayal at the Minsk agreement, the betrayal of the Istanbul agreement. So I think it is very important that the real history of the Ukraine war be told. Now, on the more hopeful sign of events, we are now, in the next week, we will see a whole series of meetings, the BRICS foreign minister meeting, the BRICS summit will start. You have various other global South meetings. And in that context, it is important that Maria Zakharova reports about a discussion between Putin and Xi Jinping, which took place in mid-June, where they discussed that at the upcoming BRICS summit, to which neither Putin nor Xi Jinping will go in person, but their foreign ministers will go there, there will be a big discussion about a new investment platform, which carries further the idea pronounced at the Kazan summit a year ago. And, that this is obviously an important step by, the BRICS countries to move in the direction of creating a better credit accessibility for the countries of the global South. And that can only be a positive, and President Trump should not regard that as a threat, because it is not. It is a vehicle to allow countries of the global South to invest in their own future. So if you sum the situation up, the tensions remain utterly high. The genocide in Gaza continues. I'm not very hopeful about this peace plan, but it's on the table now. Maybe other speakers today can address it with more insight. And I think all of this makes clear the International Peace Coalition has a big job. We are absolutely required to escalate our attempts to bring the world in a different direction, namely to really fight to put a new international global security and development architecture on the table, about which last week Sergei Lavrov talked and echoed actually everything we have been discussing here for the last 2 years. So I think this is very promising, because I think this idea to move to a completely different architecture, which takes into account the security interest and economic interest of every country on the planet, is the only way how we will get out of this present war danger. So that's my initial remarks.
Thank you very much, Helga, for that opening for the discussion. I'd like to bring in our good friend, Ray McGovern, who we'll be seeing here in Berlin very, very soon. Ray McGovern is a former CIA analyst and co-founder of the Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. Welcome, Ray. So good to have you on.
Ja, ich freue mich schon darauf. I'm looking forward to being with you all just next weekend. May I be heard, or can I be heard okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Helga, for your roundup there. There's so much going on. I'm always amazed at how you can keep it so succinct and so much to the point. I'll try to be brief since I'm packing my bags today. Let me pick up on what concerns me the most. And this concerns me so much that I would ask for just a moment of silence, because genocide is going on as we speak. Genocide enabled by my country and others who could pick up the phone and stop it. No more need be said. Let's pause for 30 seconds or so. Those who pray, pray. Those who meditate, meditate. But after these 30 seconds, let us all pledge to do something. To do something. Lastly, on this subject, you've heard me quote my favorite adage, my favorite principle, where It's called the Noah principle. Okay. We do great work here, but one needs to heed always what I call the Noah principle. And here it is, folks. Please listen. No more awards for predicting rain. Awards only for building arcs. So when we depart this Zoom, let us start building our own little arcs. We all can do something. It is a moral requirement for us to do what we can to stop the genocide. Well, okay. The most important things that happened last week, well, obviously, from my point of view, it's Trump and Putin are still talking. My God. Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, was asked about this, and he said, well, okay. So, in effect, he said, so the U.S. joined in this war of aggression against Iran. That's on a different plane. We're still interested in developing good relations with the United States. Whoa. I'm always surprised at the distinction that they can make. And it pertains especially to the situation in Ukraine, of course. So, Putin, Trump yesterday spoke for an hour. That is very, very good news. Now, what else? Well, the weapons delivery from the U.S. to Ukraine has stopped. My God, how long have we been waiting for this? The Ukrainians are pretending that they weren't even told about this, that it was very peremptory, and they learned the same way the rest of us did. Maybe that is true. If that's the way diplomacy is done in our country, well, it's par for the course. Macron. I have a different reading of Macron. I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. Yeah, he spent 10 hours with Putin on the phone, right? Here's my concept of how that went. Putin put his earplugs there. What do you call them? Ear or whatever they are, okay? And then he went and worked out for 45 minutes. Every now and then said, yeah, right. Yeah, mais oui. And then he came back and said, okay, you're finished now? All right. That's the end of it. Macron is well, I won't say the adjectives that immediately come to mind, but he's just trying to be dramatic here. He holds no credibility with Mr. Putin, given how his predecessors have actually tricked and betrayed the Minsk Accords and everything else. So when we talk about the coalition of the willing, for those who are younger, this is what was used when sensible leaders in Germany and France said, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? We don't see that. We don't see your intelligence as being at all reliable. We're out of here. And so Bush, Cheney, and Colin Powell decided to go with this coalition of the willing, okay? People like Fiji and the Marshall Islands and, of course, Israel. That was the coalition of the willing. The coalition now is, in my view, well, here, I wrote their names down. Merz, Macron, and Stammer. Doesn't that sound like a personal injury law firm? I mean, you could see the billboard, right? You could say, auto accident, personal injury, call Merz, Macron, and Stammer, or Stammer. They're ambulance chasers. And they're the coalition, in my view, of the brain dead. They will have no appreciable role to play now because they don't have the weapons, they don't have the money, and for them to give Ukraine the idea that they can step in and replace the United States, that's kind of immoral as well as just plain stupid in my view. Okay, the other thing about Ukraine is that, and also Russia, US, is that when I'm in Germany this coming week with Elizabeth Murray, my colleague from Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, I hope with tongue in cheek to ask my German interlocutors, well, you have pride of place now with the Russians as the Glavny Vrag. Glavny Vrag is main enemy. since 1917. Now, I wasn't around then, but since 1917, the Glavny Vrag, the main enemy of Russia, has been, guess who? The United States of America. Now it's different. The polls 2 months ago replaced the U.S. by appreciable margin with Germany. That has implications, all the more so since there was a side agreement in the earlier last year's NATO summit where the Germans under Scholz decided that, oh, if the Americans want to put middle range, intermediate range ballistic missiles, nuclear capable ballistic missiles in Germany, well, when Scholz was asked about that, well, how'd that go? How'd that happen? Bilateral agreement, not a NATO. He says, well, the Americans, they wanted to do that. And so we said, okay. Granddad, you got Schwartz as well. Okay, let me not dwell on this. Let me just finish up by talking about Iran. I've already said that the most peculiar thing is that the Russians have not stopped talking to us, even though we joined this war of aggression by Israel against Iran. Now, where does that stand? I think Helga set the stage. IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, out of there. Okay, the Iranians formally have said, please get out of here. Okay. Oh, what does that mean? Well, that means aside from these very sophisticated collection devices that go around in satellites, and it's not just imagery, by the way, we don't really know what's going on in those places that heretofore have been monitored by hundreds of cameras in various places run by the IAEA. So what does that mean? Well, thinking this through, it occurred to me, well, the professional judgment by the intelligence agencies of the U.S. since 2007, okay, that Iran is not working on a nuclear weapon, and we know that for sure, and we would know if they began working on a nuclear weapon quickly, in the words of a former CIA director, that no longer obtains. My God. So could they get a nuclear weapon? Yes, they can. Could they get it quickly? The experts diverge on that. Most people say several months. A couple of people say even less time. What does that mean? Well, so far they have not quit the Non-Proliferation Treaty, as Helga mentioned. That means something. And what means even more, and this is really hard for us English-speaking or Americans to understand, what's a fatwa? Well, I've learned from my various discussions with Iranians that unlike in my tradition, Catholic tradition, unlike an encyclical, okay, where a pope says, you shall, and the pope has said this, you shall show preference to the poor. You shall not enrich the rich further. You need to take care of the widow, the orphan, and the refugee. That's our encyclical. Well, turns out that from the pulpit on Sunday, that's sort of optional. If it means less money in the collection plate, well, it's hardly ever mentioned. So I asked my Iranian friends, is it the same with a fatwa? And they laughed and said, my God, McGovern, you're crazy. No, a fatwa is a fatwa. It enjoins the Iranians, all of them. The supreme leader has the final say. Now, next question from McGovern. Well, will he change his mind? He may. The question really is the pressure he's under, he may change his mind, but he will announce this publicly. Now, people may differ on that, but my friends in Iran tell me that, look, this has been such a cause célèbre in the parliament and everywhere else that there would be no way other than the supreme leader, Khamenei, to announce the reversal of the fatwa, saying it's okay in the Muslim faith to build a nuclear weapon given the provocation. He hasn't done that yet. Now, is that significant? Well, hard for me to believe, but it is, okay? So that's what we watch for now. And my notion about the Iranians is that they're really smart people, that there's no reason at this point, having shown dominance in this war, where the Israelis had to come to us and say, please get it stopped here. Please stop, stop, stop. We're losing. I mean, we don't even know the extent of damage in Israel, but it's appreciable. So that's sort of well, the other side of how quickly they can develop a nuclear weapon undetected now, or detected only by these satellites and not by the cameras. What else here? I would just mention in closing that I have been in discussion with an author. He's actually a medical doctor, but he spends most of his time on these issues. His name is Ben Abelow. I'll spell it for you. Abelow. Now, Ben is a really good analyst of foreign affairs, and when he saw what was coming in Ukraine, with the Russians feeling required to go into Ukraine, he wrote a book. It's a small book. It's only about 110 pages, but it's a really good book, and it's been translated into German, into Italian, into many languages. It's available on Amazon. Get a hold of it, because even though it can easily be updated by virtue of sessions like this, it is core. And for those of your neighbors who don't understand and need to have a German version, it's right there for the asking, okay? So I intend to advertise that this coming week in Germany. And, for those of you who have Italian or Spanish, it's available, okay? Read it and refer it to your neighbors. BRICS is coming up. That's big. That was mentioned by Helga. And Russia and China are cooperating in ways never before seen. The U.S. is odd man out. It's 2 against 1. Yes, Putin and Trump are talking to each other. That matters. But what matters even more is the correlation of forces has suffered a tectonic shift. Two against 1 is big. Hopefully, U.S. policymakers, such as they are, will come to realize that and get rid of the notion that they can play Russia off against China or vice versa. They need to have some Vernunft, some common sense. And I'll end it there, having appealed for common sense. I welcome your invitation to participate here, because there are a few other places where I encounter so much Vernunft, common sense. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Ray. And we are very much looking forward to you coming to the conference. I just want to put the link in the chat for people for the in-person invitation to come to the conference. Be really a lot of fun for IPC members to join this. You must register for it, and then also the online registration for people who maybe can't fly all the way around the world to come to it.
Anastasia, let me just interject here. A lot of people are tired of me. They know me pretty well. But Elizabeth Murray, who I was going to say graduated from the CIA, retired from the CIA exactly 10 years after I did, is exactly 10 years younger than I am, and is a specialist on the Middle East, having worked in places like Jordan, Syria, Gaza, speaks fluent Arabic, is a specialist on Gaza and other things like that. So she deserves top billing here. And I hope you can all come this coming Saturday when she and I will both be speaking. Thanks.
Wonderful. And I know you have to get going, Ray. I just wanted to check with Helga before you go if she had a response to anything you've said so far. Oh, you're muted, Helga. Oh, okay. Well, I guess the German authorities are already cutting off your ability to speak.
If Helga can fix that up, that would be great. Meanwhile, let me just make one brief comment on your NOAA's principle, Ray. which is Lyndon LaRouche said something about forecasting, which was, I think, the precise equivalent of that concept, but with different words. In a September 2007 article that he wrote called When Fate Hangs on a Forecast, he stated unequivocally, this was his opening comment, the actual strategic purpose and function of competent economic forecasting is not to attempt to predict what will happen, but to cause it to happen.
Mm.
So very similar. Oh, good. Helga's unmuted.
Okay. No, I just wanted to express my happy surprise how close Ray McGovern and I always look at the situation. And obviously, you know, I really enjoy that because, I mean, look, I think if people would just listen to these words and draw their conclusions, like, for example, the fact that now you have Russia and China being absolutely, in my view, I fully agree, undividable. There's nothing in the world which will separate these two because, you know, if Wang Yi goes out and tells, of all people, Kaya Kallas, who is I mean, she is, as you know, we have to watch our words in Germany because you can be sued for breathing in the wrong direction. But, you know, that Wang Yi basically tells her that that is why China doesn't want to see a defeat of Russia in Ukraine. I mean, that's like, if you want to have a written guarantee, you know, that is really going to be there. And, you know, that memorandum, which was concluded between Putin and Xi Jinping on the occasion of the Winter Olympics in Beijing on the 4th of February, I mean, that was really an absolute marker and tectonic shift in one direction. And it's not a coincidence, you know, that the so-called special military operation started several weeks later. So I think this is a new strategic reality. But, you know, the BRICS is a hopeful thing. And I think people should watch what comes out of the BRICS meeting. I'm very hopeful that they will issue a statement which will express not only the view of the BRICS, but the view of the global South. And I think the West is better advised to finally start realizing that we are not the dominant power in the world, but the global majority is 85 to 88% of the human population. And we should find a better arrangement with them rather than trying to maintain an order of the past, which is gone in any case and may only exist in the blinded minds of some establishment figures.
May I add a word?
Oh, yeah, just go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, I would just say or ask people to look for a more active role by China in the Middle East or Southwest Asia. They have a big stake in what happens in the Persian Gulf, and they are speaking out pretty forcefully, denouncing what has happened over the last couple of weeks. One little factoid that had escaped me is that the Chinese lawyers, their legal people in the Foreign Office, have testified in Geneva that Hamas has every right under international law to use force against those who occupy Gaza. Somehow or other that had escaped me, but I've watched now several times the Chinese lawyer representing China's view in Geneva. It's about a year ago, but I don't know why I should have been shocked by that, but the Chinese are coming around to playing a bigger role there, and for the Chinese to assert that what Hamas did was justified under international law, well, that means a lot to me because I happen to share that opinion, but it's not a very popular opinion, and I hear somebody knocking at my door right now with FBI credentials, so I'm going to have to say goodbye. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ray, and safe travels.
Thanks.
And we'll see you soon.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll continue with our agenda here and bring in Mr. Jonathan Kuttab, who's a good friend He's the executive director of North America Friends of Sabeel and co-founder of Nonviolence International. And thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Kuttab. I know you've been very busy. There's a lot happening right now. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always both gratifying and humbling for me to attend those sessions with an international audience of thoughtful, intelligent, well-informed people. That is such a contrast to many audiences that we have in the United States that seem to be totally focused and centered on what's happening in the United States, and that sees things through the, I would say, traditional, customary wisdom of the establishment elites in this country. When there is a world out there, a whole entire international community that lives in a different world. And in fact, the case of Palestine, I've argued in more than one place, really puts the lie to the entire international order that exists. But it doesn't present yet an alternative. And let me be very clear about that. There are some hints, some indications that China may play a much more important role, that the BRICS countries are creating their own structures of international cooperation. But that has been pretty much a powerful but subtle motion under the radar, at least as far as the United States and some of the Western countries are concerned, who are still hanging on to the current international order, even as it is crumbling and collapsing. And I say it is crumbling and collapsing, I think, for three basic reasons. The first is the clear contrast between how Israel and Palestine is being treated as opposed to Russia, the Ukraine situation. And coming so close right after the Gaza invasion, coming so close after the Ukrainian situation, just presents the hypocrisy of the West in a very blatant light. How come you want to bring sanctions and warrants against Putin, but you don't want to bring them against Israel? How come you accept a certain level of violations of sovereign integrity of states in the Ukraine, but the United States and Israel can violate the sovereignty of other countries with impunity? How come you refer to international law and human rights and collective punishment and the inviolability of hospitals and the criminality of attacking non-combatants and civilians in the Ukraine, but you don't do that in Palestine? But that's only one reason. The second, perhaps more powerful reason is that despite the attempts to hide the reality, the genocide that's taking place in Gaza today is clear, documented, taking place in light of day, is viewed 24/7. Everybody can see it. Unlike the Holocaust in Germany, which took place in the dark, and where many people claimed, rightly or wrongly, even the Germans claimed we didn't know it was happening while it was happening. It was only after the war that we saw the horrors of the concentration camps, the forced marches, and the starvation and the mass genocide that was taking place. Here, you see it every day, and you hear the perpetrators talk about it openly. There are no innocent. We want to destroy the whole thing. Men, women, and children. We are preventing what we ourselves are calling humanitarian aid from going in. We are cutting off food and water. We are preventing medical supplies from going in. We are insisting on basically carrying out a genocide while the whole world is watching, and we are getting away with it. That is the second and blatant. I've never seen anything so blatant, and yet being at least officially denied. You can't use the word genocide or apartheid, even though everybody can see it, despite the fact that you're preventing journalists from going in, despite the fact that you are assassinating literally over 230 journalists, local journalists, targeting them with their families, systematically, consistently, using AI, using assassination, where every single hospital has been attacked, every single university has been destroyed, all the means of livelihood have been utterly crushed and destroyed, and yet this is taking place. The third reason, for the first time ever, we have seen the criminals actually threaten, sanction, and punish the judges and the prosecutors and those who are collecting and presenting evidence before international tribunals. I've never even heard of anything like that. Yes, we know mafias in certain countries threaten judges, local judges, but for a country to openly threaten the judges, the prosecutors, and their families is something, I think totally unprecedented. So I say that the basic mechanisms, the basic architecture of existing international law and international cooperation are being systematically attacked. I mean, Netanyahu actually said that. About 4 or 5 years ago, he said, if international law is against us, we can change international law. He actually said that publicly. And we see it happening with the United States, certainly under the current administration, pulling out of the World Health Organization in the midst of a pandemic, pulling out of the Paris Accords in the midst of climate catastrophes, pulling out of all forms of international cooperation, agreements, again, when they are most needed. Okay, so if the current architecture of international law gets destroyed, if it collapses, it hasn't quite yet, but it is collapsing. It is being attacked. It is losing its functionality and credibility. What takes its place? We are not very clear, and civil society has not sufficiently coalesced to work at creating alternatives. The United Nations still continues to exist and be seen as the premier instrument of international law through its many functions, not just the Security Council, which is hampered by the veto, and not just the General Assembly, but it has many functions. It has over 40 different agencies that are still operating and still functioning more or less effectively, and it has not been replaced yet. And it is really interesting that in this forum, we have thoughtful people who are considering this and considering what are the alternatives and what needs to be done. In the meanwhile, until such new structures appear or are created or become acceptable or are being explored, this is what we have. We do have an international public order. A lot of it depends on the active participation of member countries, because these crimes against humanity and these war crimes carry with them universal jurisdiction. And there is actually a statutory obligation for countries to ensure compliance with those conventions, so that individual countries can, on their own, arrest these war criminals and bring them to trial, can, on their own, begin to impose sanctions, stop sending weapons, even stop trading with countries that openly violate international law. So start implementing the few warrants that have already been issued against Netanyahu and Gantz and maybe others. So we do have the ability. You know, people say international law cannot be enforced. Yes, it can be. The mechanism exists for enforcing it. The political will by different countries to actually carry out enforcement is sometimes lacking. And maybe this is where, at least in the interim, civil society can begin to operate now to put pressure on their own governments to begin implementing their own obligations under existing treaties and convention to ensure compliance with international law, especially in the clearly outrageous situation in Gaza today of an enforced starvation, an enforced genocide, a deliberate prevention of entry of humanitarian assistance, and an ongoing almost daily massacres that somehow no longer shock people. People understand them. They take place every single day. About 100 people get killed, more than half of them trying to reach the few distribution centers that have been created as an alternative to the existing international professional humanitarian organizations that know how to distribute food to the needy, that are being totally bypassed in favor of this mechanism of starvation / entrapment and killing of a civilian non-combatant population. So this is the challenge that I think we are facing, and as I said, I am pleased to be in the presence of an audience who really take these issues seriously, not just as a partisan issue of supporting one side or another, but as a universal issue of how the human race conducts its life and its functions, how we as countries, as nations, interact with one another. There will always be conflict. There will always be disputes. How do we resolve them? How do we deal with them in an age of nuclear and destructive weapons, of climate change, of AI, of pandemics, of challenges to the human race itself, which are being almost ignored and allowed to be superseded by petty, individual, selfish interests of one or two countries in the world, supported, of course, I have to say, by the United States.
Yeah, unfortunately, very, very unfortunately. But thank you, Mr. Kuttab, for that. Thank you very much for all the work that you're doing and for joining us today. I know you've been very busy. Before you go, I just wanted to see if Helga Zepp-LaRouche wanted to comment on anything that you've said so far.
Yeah, I want to thank you too for your extremely frank and correct words. I would only disagree with you in one nuance of the assessment. I think that the foundations of international law have eroded already much, much more, because when the international community was sitting by watching this genocide, which, as you correctly say, could be seen by everybody in their living room now for over a year, that already meant that the international community had abandoned their responsibility. And it was only through the courageous behavior of the South African government that you know, that the honor of mankind was sort of saved. So that was the first big blow. And I think the second big blow is that if the US government can negotiate with Iran, leaving them in the confidence that diplomacy is what is meant to be the way to solve this conflict or this problem, and in the same time, the same government of President Trump is, you know, conspiring with the Israeli government to make this strike. This was a non-pro, and you spoke correctly about the difference between Ukraine and Russia and the Middle East, how people look at that. But, you know, that, in my view, meant already that, you know, if the strongest military power in the world, the United States, arguably they still are that, that means that a precedent has been created which now can be repeated by every country in the world and say, if the United States can do that, we can do it. We also have an enemy in the other country who is about to attack us, and we have to have a preemptive attack on them. So if you just look at these two incidents, I'm much more concerned that the whole you know, the moral authority and the legal foundations of the international order have gone much, much, much more, in my view. And that's why I think that the really urgent issue is this international security and development architecture, you know, which many people think, oh, why is she always saying this? It's a utopian conception. But, you know, I think if we do not seriously try to put the whole world order on a different foundation, which is accepted by everybody, then chaos reigns. So that would be my only slight disagreement with you of your otherwise wonderful, important remarks.
Thank you. I take the correction. You think that the collapse is already greater than I am indicating. And in fact, the collapse is very frightening. I hope it is not total. The fact that law is being violated and that a few powerful agents are getting away with violating it doesn't mean that there is no more law. Law requires both a general acceptance, legitimization, and also enforcement. People drive on the right-hand side of the road or the left side, or they stop at red lights, not because there's a policeman standing at every street corner, but because the entire community knows that you have to drive on the right-hand side of the road. You can't just have everybody drive wherever they wish. That is chaos. Yes, there's some people violate the law, and a few of them are strong and powerful enough to get away with it, maybe for a while. But that doesn't, the entire architecture of law does not collapse that quickly. At least that's my hope. That's my hope for humanity, that the entire architecture doesn't totally collapse, and that as it begins to collapse, that we have other forms that take its place. We cannot live in a total chaos jungle where every powerful country can do whatever it wants. We cannot.
Thank you, Mr. Kuttab. Do you have time for one more comment? I see Ray McGovern raised his hand.
Sure.
Go ahead, Ray.
Yes, I'm gratefully glad that I stayed around for Mr. Kuttab's presentation. It was terrific. I think what needs to be emphasized here is there are mechanisms. There still are real rules, not just the rule of the jungle, not just the rules-based international order, which has been thoroughly disgraced. And that gives reason for hope. The more so since Russia and China, the other two biggies here, honor the UN, pursue things through the UN, have not given up hope on what they can achieve through the UN, despite all the indignities that have occurred over the last couple of years. So I would just end by associating myself with Dr. Kuttab and say not only that there's no alternative, the UN is being resorted to by very key countries, and still, look, the NPT still matters. Lots of things still matter, these 40 agencies and so forth. And Netanyahu is not going to be around forever. Okay? And his government's not going to be around forever. And I truly believe that it's just a matter of time before he leaves the scene, the more so since the mood is changing in our country quite amazingly. You see polls now indicating that justice-seeking Jews, for example, are overwhelmingly opposed to what Netanyahu and his boss Trump are doing. Thanks for letting me say that, and thank you so much, Mr. Kuttab, for saying the things you did.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray, and thank you, Mr. Kuttab, for joining us. I know you have to get going, but it was really a pleasure to have you on today, both of you. So we'll continue with our agenda. I'll introduce the next person for the discussion. We have Juan Carrero of Spain. Juan is the president of the C. Olivar Foundation of Spain, and he's a lifelong fighter for peace and nonviolent change, and has been against the genocide. He's been particularly active for decades in exposing the atrocities being committed in the Democratic Republic of Congo and other parts of Africa. He has been with the International Peace Coalition from its inception, from the very beginning. And he has also brought statements of support for the Schiller Institute and the International Peace Coalition from his close friend, the 1980 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Adolphe Pérez Esquivel. In fact, today, Juan will also introduce a short video from Pérez Esquivel, made public on June 24th of this year. And thank you so much for joining us, Juan. Please go ahead. You have the floor.
Más bien, gracias yo a ustedes.
Thank you. I thank you.
Buenos días a unos.
Good morning to some of you. Good afternoon, others. And I would like to pick up where Ray left off by saying that it is an honor to participate in a forum where there is something as rare as common sense. I would say further, there is much lucidity and courage. And for these reasons, I believe it is indeed an honor to participate here under the leadership of someone like Helga, someone like Ray. And before moving on to the video with the urgent call by our friend Adolfo Pérez Esquivel, I would like to say a few words in the following minutes. The Schiller Institute, which has organized this gathering international gathering for peace, is very concerned because that the Armageddon could end the world. I think that anyone who is not concerned would fit in the same category as the theologist murdered by the Nazis is described as paralyzed by propaganda. The Schiller Institute presents magnificent geostrategic analyses, but at the same time, it makes continuous reference to the importance of morality. Helga has just stressed this issue once again, because the lack of morality is always at the origin of the devastating fall of empires and of all the war madness of history. Delirious warmongering and moral corruption are deeply connected. Those who, following a delusional expansionist project, have set out to bring about a regime change in Iran, the seventh and last of the regime changes that they have planned, claim to be very concerned about Iran getting the nuclear bomb. But Iran, like many other countries that resist the latest follies of the decadent Anglo-Western Empire country, and even in Russia, Iran, as all of these countries, has something much more powerful than nuclear weapons. It is dignity. In Iran, they are aware that the terrorist assassination of their generals or nuclear scientists in their homes, murdered with their entire families, is not a failure, because each one of them is a martyr whose blood will bring life to their people. In this, both the heroic military leaders and political activists agree with the proponents of the nonviolence movement. There's something much worse than physical death, and that is moral death. A world that ignores the great tragedies of today, such as the tragedy in Gaza or in Syria, because it may seem that these tragedies are not directly related to the outbreak of nuclear Armageddon, is an unworthy world, a morally dead world. And so is a world that disregards Africa, because conflicts there are not with weapons of mass destruction or weapons that can wipe out our Anglo-Western way of life. And we conclude that we should not tolerate the madness of a scandalously toxic European leader, when the real economy so eloquently spoken of Lyndon LaRouche, nor the madness of the project for a greater Israel, or the madness of seeking the collapse of Russia, or the madness of the annexation of the vast eastern land of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which the genocidal Paul Kagame is seeking. An annexation of the Democratic Republic of Congo, with its 7 million refugees, with an even greater number of millions of victims who died, hundreds of thousands of rapes, systematic murder or imprisonment of heroic leaders who could end this madness, such as our friend Victoire Ingabire Umuhoza. Although the African Court of Human and People's Rights ruled in favor of her, Paul Kagame has kidnapped her once more. and no one has access to her. I will end these remarks then the same way I ended my earlier remarks to this same forum of the Schiller Institute, with a message of support from our dear friend and teacher of nonviolence, Nobel Peace Laureate Adolfo Pérez Esquivel, 1980 Nobel Peace Prize. I close then with his most recent urgent call, so similar to the calls of the Schiller Institute and the International Peace Coalition. It is a call to disarm armed consciences, stop the wars and the lies. Thank you.
Les habla Adolfo Pérez Esquivel desde Buenos Aires, preocupado como cada uno de ustedes por la grave situación que vive el mundo. La guerra que se va incrementando, cada vez más virulenta, y la intervención de los Estados Unidos en su ataque a Irán. Lo mismo que Israel. Son los países agresores sobre un país soberano y violan todos los tratados internacionales, los mismos derechos de las Naciones Unidas y el derecho de los pueblos. Por eso hay que reaccionar frente a esto y unirse para poder construir la paz. También quiero hacer un llamado a todos los países europeos, muchos aliados de Israel y de Estados Unidos. No se incrementen las acciones bélicas porque ponen en peligro el sistema planetario. Si llega a haber una guerra nuclear, aquí no queda nadie. Por eso tenemos que tener una rebelión de las conciencias en buscar nuevos caminos alternativos de diálogo. Las Naciones Unidas deben superar su modorra, su inoperancia y llamar a la Asamblea General. Hoy son 193 países que pueden decidir salvar a la humanidad. Y los 5 países que tienen el derecho a veto tienen que respetar la mayoría de las naciones del mundo. También tengo que señalar que aquí en Argentina el gobierno de Milei es un aliado de Estados Unidos y de Israel y se alegra y se vanagloria de los ataques contra Irak y contra el genocidio contra el pueblo palestino. Esto es tremendo y no es la voluntad del pueblo argentino, sino que son estas posiciones autoritarias, personalistas, que dañan al pueblo en general. Mientras no se atienden las necesidades de nuestro pueblo de hambre, de desocupación, de educación y de la salud, con sus ataques en todos esos frentes que tiene el gobierno de Milei. Pido a las organizaciones sociales unirse para reclamar la paz a través del diálogo y el derecho de los pueblos. Tengan en cuenta que hoy la humanidad está en una situación sumamente crítica. También a las iglesias. El Papa se ha pronunciado, como se han pronunciado el Consejo Mundial de Iglesias, frente a esta escalada cada día peor de violencia, de muerte, de sufrimiento de los pueblos. Recuerden ustedes que en el mundo hay millones de refugiados que tienen que ir de sus países buscando un lugar donde poder vivir y sobrevivir, no vivir, sobrevivir en la situación actual que están sus países. Así que hago un llamado a movilizarse, a generar acciones por la paz, que no es la ausencia del conflicto, sino de las relaciones humanas. Los pueblos tienen fuerza, tienen coraje y decisión para enfrentar lo que hoy es el desprecio del ser humano, el desprecio de los valores. Y estoy hablando de las grandes potencias, estoy hablando de Israel, que es acusado por la Corte Penal Internacional como genocidas al primer ministro Benjamín Netanyahu. Así que fuerza, mucha esperanza y tenemos que unirnos para salvar la vida de nuestro planeta y la vida de cada ser humano. Gracias.
Thank you.
I was underwater.
Pardon me.
I just
While you're dealing with whatever that technical issue was, let me just add that Adolfo Pérez Esquivel, the 1980 Nobel Peace Laureate, as you heard, was just yesterday in Buenos Aires to receive President Lula of Brazil and met with him. There are pictures of this. Lula was there for a summit of Mercosur and had an extraordinary personal meeting with the imprisoned ex-president of Argentina, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, who is a longtime friend of his. And Lula and Cristina met. Both of them had been imprisoned by lawfare, as they called it, because they stood up for their populations. And although Pérez Esquivel wasn't part of that bilateral meeting, he did meet with Lula there at that meeting place, which is the apartment of Cristina Fernandez, where she is under house arrest for 6 years for crimes she never committed. So I thought that would put a timely exclamation mark on what you just heard.
Thank you, Dennis. And I apologize for the advertisement after the video. But I want to thank Juan Carrero for what you said and bringing this very important message from your friend, Adolfo Perez Esquivel. This was very moving, and I want to thank you and thank him for doing this today. Thank you so much for joining us. So we shall continue with our agenda. So next we have for the agenda another video statement which was sent in from Dr. Grigori D. Talaroya. He's the executive director of the Russian National Committee on BRICS Research and concurrently the director of the Asian Strategy Center at the Institute of Economics and chief researcher of the Institute of China and Contemporary Asia of Russian Academy of Sciences. So just give me one moment here to pull up this video.
Hello, everybody. I would like to say that we're living in a strange time when both war and diplomacy are not something that they used to be. War becomes strange. There are no armies marching against each other on the battlefield, but rather hybrid war and small skirmishes along the front line, as we see in Ukraine. And sometimes it happens in the air, as we saw Iran and Israel conflict. At the same time, diplomacy has also changed. I have a feeling that more and more these are not diplomats during the official talks who makes the deal. There are some strange background channels where some people who are professionals in other areas, from intelligence to business or to military affairs, they make some deals, or their direct contacts, if unofficial, by the leaders. So that's where the real deals are met. And these ideas were given to me by the recent events in the Middle East, where everybody won. in the Iran-Israeli conflict, and it's really like that. Of course, Israel have violated every possible rule and every possible clause of international law by attacking Iran. But at the same time, Iran didn't respond in full. It has a very limited response. And it looks like some deal was made, which all the sides interpret as victory. And of course, we shall see what will go on, how it will continue. But anyway, for the moment, the peace was saved. And that's what really matters. So how diplomacy and how international relations will develop in the future when there are actually no rules and everything is possible, everything is permitted? This is one of the issues I think that will be high on the agenda on the meeting of the BRICS country leaders in Rio just next week. It won't be probably an official agenda, but the meeting of the leaders of the global South and East is a good place for them to consider how to go on, how to prevent catastrophic developments in the world, how to make arrangements that would incorporate the interests of all the parts of the humanity. Humanity is now divided. We have a collective West, the so-called gold billion, who wants to keep on dominating and in fact extract the unearned income from the former colonial powers by printing dollars, which is the backbone of the current global economic exploitation system. And for that, the West can cross all the red lines. The humanity lines, it can attack civilians, it can kill the leaders of the countries which are independent. So we know all these stories. Should the global South countries, for which BRICS is a platform of working out a common point of view, respond in kind? Probably not. Some kind of new type of arrangement, a new kind of Westphalia Treaty, I would say, be made. And BRICS Plus, the expanded BRICS, which also includes the partners, can be a good mechanism for that. If only the collective West, represented by NATO, and the backbone for which is Euro-Atlantic relations, can respond in kind. Try not to keep its privileges by all means possible, but to find a proper arrangement both in financial and security areas. We are a step of a global thermonuclear war, which can really develop if the West will try to eliminate its adversaries one by one. And the history goes that it started from places like Yugoslavia, Iraq, Libya, Syria. Iran may be next on the line. North Korea managed to survive because of its powerful nuclear deterrent and its alliance relation with Russia. But US-Chinese contradictions are growing in an alarming pace. So we should prevent it. And I believe that the global South and East, represented by BRICS, can join hands to do this. Of course, supported by the peoples of all the world. I wish you success in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tolowayev, for sending this in and for this important message to the discussion today. I think that it's going to be well received, and it'll be a very important topic that we're taking on at our conference on July 12th and 13th. I just want to, before we continue on to the reports, I just want to emphasize the importance of this conference, July 12th and 13th, to please register yourself, contact an organizer. If you'd like to be in person, you can go to theschillerinstitute.com, or you can join us online. But I really want to encourage people, especially if you have been participating in these discussions, to join us in person. It'd be wonderful to partake in this dialogue together and really make this happen for a new security and development architecture. So next for the discussion, I'd like to bring on Alan Riviera, who is an organizer in Mexico, and you just had a very wonderful, fantastic deployment on the Oasis Plan Forum, and I'll pass the torch to you. We're very excited to hear about it.
Hola, ¿qué tal a todos? Sí,
Hello.
esta semana
Greetings to all.
estuvimos presentes
Yes, we,
miembros del movimiento y el Instituto
several
Schiller,
members of our
y
movement, the Schiller Institute,
en una universidad en la
were
Ciudad de México.
present at UNAM University, Mexican National University in Mexico City. This was a forum, a conference, where the South African ambassador was invited. Also in attendance were, it was organized by students in that university, together with us. The topic was indeed the Oasis Plan as pertains to the Palestinian case, and it was held in a conference hall that was where we rehearsed with the university chorus, which also participated, and sang several songs which have been shared by the Institute and the organization with the theme of Gaza. Several songs, one in particular, and this took place immediately before Helga's and the South African ambassador's speeches. Then a dialogue was held with the students, which was very rich. And so, well, we can we delved a bit further into the details of the Oasis Plan. We had a number of technical issues showing videos at the conference, which were about the Oasis Plan, which was what we were trying to establish was the priority. In this case, the students who helped organize this event did so as part of a group of students of biological and hydrobiological sciences. So there were many questions about the purpose and the mindset change required by the Oasis Plan. What does it mean? So we stressed that this is a new mindset in the sense that holds that peace depends on development. This was the main topic and the content, and this is what I would like to share so far. There's much more that could be said, but we can share further. Here we have a few pictures of the events. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. That was very fun and exciting. I'd like to go to Fabiola next to give her report as well.
Yes, thank you. To conclude the report that my colleague Alan gave you about the conference, I want to comment on the speeches that both Mrs. LaRouche and South African Ambassador Sisulu said. Helga's message to the conference was a 4-minute video. A taste of what she said is as follows. We are facing tectonic shifts to establish a new paradigm based on peaceful coexistence. We must not forget that human beings are good by nature and that evil can be eradicated through development. We must achieve a political and economic order in harmony with the natural laws of the universe. She concluded that the Plan Oasis is an idea whose time has come. In the ambassador's speech, she began by thanking the school, the organizers, Helga, and those in attendance. She also thanked the chorus for their music. She said it was beautiful but sad, and that it spoke about reality. She talked about Mexico's and South Africa's relations. She said that Mexico supported the sanctions against South Africa during the apartheid, and that because of Mexico's support and other countries, South Africa was now a nation with freedom. That youth must play an important role in promoting peace, security, and development, and that development is essential to achieving peace. She highlighted the challenges that South Africa itself is experiencing due to climate change and the lack of water. She said that we take note of the Schiller's Foundation's proposals that to achieve peace, water is a key factor. This position also affirms that water is key to peace. She insisted that peaceful resolution to the Israel-Palestine conflict requires compliance with international law, a ceasefire, resources for reconstruction, accountability for those who committed atrocities, an end of the occupation. She also said South Africa has taken Israel to the International Court of Justice and that they subscribe the idea of a lasting peace that will give us a Palestinian state coexisting in peace with Israel within the internationally recognized 1967 borders. She quoted Mandela saying that there cannot be free South Africa without a free Palestine. The ambassador repeatedly emphasized to the youth that changes in the world are brought about by us, but what we do. Nothing stops us as citizens from demanding peace for Palestine and elsewhere, because if there is no peace in the world, Mexico will not have peace. We should not wait what governments do, but take the responsibility upon ourselves. Links to the two speeches can be found on YouTube. The channel is EIR Español. So that's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabiola. It's definitely very exciting. I'm really enjoying all the work that you guys are doing there. And are you going to be here in Berlin?
No.
No? Okay.
No, it's not my time to be there.
Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing you again soon. This is definitely very good. And I think we're going to have a really good time discussing with Katarina and others about how to expand more of this type of work. So thank you both, Alan and Fabiola. Next, I'd like to go to Berlin, where we have our good friend Daniel Burke, who has been organizing on the campuses with myself and other people on the John Quincy Adams Brigade. And why don't you go ahead, Daniel? It's been quite a fun week.
It certainly has. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, it's a little choppy, but we can hear you fine.
Okay, I will proceed. Anyway, yes, I'm here with Anastasia in Berlin as part of what we're calling the John Quincy Adams Brigade. And I've just had a wonderful time here. We've been to two major campuses in Berlin repeatedly. and found a very responsive student population. We're approaching people with an optimistic view of their ability to change the conditions here in Germany and in mankind. And so what we're approaching them with is the fact that we've had such an incredible international mobilization in Mexico City, Copenhagen, and Berlin and Paris and every other location that were active, New York, Houston, and so forth, with this very crucial leaflet from the LaRouche organization addressing the extreme danger of the use of a tactical nuclear weapon on Iran by the factions controlling the United States and Israel's military actions here. And so but the crucial thing that we're introducing is the strategic context that creates this tension, the desires of the global majority for a new world without colonialism as against this collapsing transatlantic system. We've taken out these signs saying that the bomb is not in Iran, but in the financial system. And the response that we're receiving is students who oftentimes say, yes, but what can we do about it, given the fact that politicians do not listen to the people? It's in that context that we're raising for them this incredible universal contribution of German classical culture, I told a young man who's studying to be a lawyer, imagine that across the entire world, people know the idea that alle Menschen werden Brüder, all men become brothers, through Beethoven and his Ninth Symphony from Friedrich Schiller, and that this core conception of the essential harmonious character of man, it is available to us because of the contributions made by just a handful of individuals. We're raising Helga LaRouche's comment about how her
Daniel, I think we've lost you.
It does look like it. I tried to stop his video so that it would just be audio, but I think he's out.
Okay. All right. Well, there it is again, the German authorities going after our people. Okay, well, we'll continue on. And if he's still there, if we're able to get him back on, then we'll do that. But it has been a lot of fun here. People have seen some of the pictures that we've had on the campuses. We're shoring up some students to go out with us as well, to go in the streets, to come out and deploy and to come to the conference. So anyway, it's been very, very good. And I want to encourage everyone, especially if you're here in Germany and if you're here in Berlin or other parts, to come out with us, come out and deploy. And it's good for your soul. It's very good for your soul to go out and talk to other people. So what I'd like to do is we'll continue with the reports. We have another report coming in from France from Sebastian. Let's make sure we have you here. Yeah, Sebastian Droken. Sorry if I'm butchering your name, but it's been really great to hear from you and see you just not too long ago. And yeah, there you are. Go ahead, please.
Sebastian Drochon, but it's okay.
Pardon, I've got a Spanish background.
No problem. No. So thank you very much for inviting me. Just to give you a report on what we're doing here in France, mobilized, thinking about all our international friends mobilized in Mexico, in Berlin, in the United States. And we're here, we're mobilizing around the Scherer Institute, but also Solidarité et Progrès, who is a partner of the Scherer Institute here in France with Jacques Cheminade. And we are very fully mobilized to participate to the international peace coalition, and we are leafleting the LaRouche organization leaflet is there going to be a thermonuclear fireworks before the 4th of July. We leafleted in front of the Foreign Ministry of Paris, France, the Quai d'Orsay, and also in front of the National Assembly this week. And we had good reactions. People were knowing Jacques Cheminade, but also Lyndon LaRouche. No, not courageous people, let's say, that they took the leaflet and they understood what we were saying about the fact that we are in a real danger of thermonuclear war and World War III. So that is interesting to see this kind of reaction in people taking the leaflet. So also we went to the, École Militaire, so different places where you have institutions here in Paris to make sure that the people know what we're saying internationally. So that is one thing. But also,
I have some of the pictures. Do you want me to share them?
Yeah. You can share
Yeah,
pictures.
okay.
No problem. You can you can do it when I'm speaking, just to people to see what we're doing. So no problem. One thing also is that we kind of have a lot of fun deploying. It's not that the situation is fun because we are in a dangerous situation, but we have to bring the people to another level of thinking the situation. So we decided to have some kind of original singular deployment with book tables, let's say, for war and one for peace. And people having kind of dissonance, not understanding at the beginning what we were doing, but just showing them that you don't have to think in the narrative. The media, the mainstream media wants you to think, but you have to think above and to see the things above the situation and to see what are the causes of the war. So we have this kind of deployments in front of the international city where we have a lot of foreign students and good reactions. By the way, we have an American friend, Kainan, who is deploying with us. He's coming to Berlin with us, and also Francois from Canada, helping us to mobilize the population. So that's very good because we show the international connection. So good reactions. Also, we went to the center of Paris where you have a lot of tourists, but also French people. And we have good reactions, people contributing to our mobilization, taking documents. And just to give you some example, I just met today a Japanese journalist who's a retired journalist, and she's living in France since 10 years. And she discovered the lies of the narrative, of the war narrative, when she went to Libya and she saw that Libya was during the Gaddafi regime, it was still a country where people had some development. And after that, she saw what happened. And she saw all the lies. And she was a journalist who couldn't tell what was happening in Libya. So she discovered the deep state and all that stuff. And she knows very well Scott Ritter, Mr. McGregor. She knows all the people who are participating in the International Peace Coalition, but she didn't know the LaRouche organization. So maybe she will come to Berlin, let's say, but she was very interested. So it's a real good contact. And also different people, a young Lebanese Spanish girl living in France, and also a French woman who contributed a good contribution to the cause, and because she understood the urgency of the mobilization. So that is really good. We are really mobilized to come to Berlin to have this French delegation here, and And one thing is that we have two signs, very polemical signs that maybe have been shown on the screen. One with Colin Powell showing the small tube, saying we have the proof that Iraq had mass weapons of mass destructions, and we say Bibi Netanyahu told me that Iran had a nuclear bomb, and people understand that the same lies are today told in the media to justify the acts of Israel and also the United States, the last against Iran. So the people understand very well the irony, the significance of these signs, and also the sign which says, "Don't let a thermonuclear war ruin your summer holidays." And the people, I think, they have to think about that because they understand what's happening. A lot of people, know things. They know, they say, we know. Okay, they know, but now they have to act and do something. So we call them to contribute, at least let their contact. And so we have a lot of people to call back and to mobilize. So that's all. And we're going to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. That was great. I really did enjoy the dual tables and the setup of the pro-war table. I can only imagine how ridiculous it must have been, some of the people coming up to that. So thank you for that. That was very polemical. Next, I'd like to bring up and make sure that we have Bill here. Bill Ferguson, also known as the Bard of Boston. They have been going out into Boston and distributing this emergency leaflet, and it's been quite fun watching what you all have been doing with your colonial triangle hats. This has been very useful, but why don't you go ahead, Bill?
Okay, can you hear me?
It's a little low, but we can hear you.
Okay. Trying to share a screen with you. Do you see a minute man there? How's that?
It's just starting. 1 second.
Okay.
There we go. We see it.
Okay. Yes, that's me in my approximation of a Minuteman costume. This was at a rally, an anti-war rally that happened last Thursday. Excuse me. Yeah, as we're distributing this leaflet, as the title says, will there be thermonuclear fireworks by the 4th of July? We wanted to provoke some self-consciousness in the population that we're addressing and get them to reflect on the errors in their thinking. Well, the big error in thinking is that geopolitics, rule by force, is a way to run the world. And the another irony that we really focused in on, as Sebastian kind of referred to, is that here we are approaching a holiday which is really about the unalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we're wasting it by flirting with nuclear war. And most people are more concerned about whether or not they have enough hot dogs, potato salad, and beer for the weekend. So, as he mentioned, this got a lot of laughs. You could actually see it as people were coming through. Sometimes they would, laugh and grab the leaflet, and others would. You could see in their mind the process of them trying to figure out whether they wanted to take the leaflet or not, and that was funny. But it also helped to get people to laugh and loosen up a bit. This one here I particularly liked. So we've had about the last week, we've gotten out about 3,000 copies of this flyer. In particular, we had a very interesting effort yesterday. This is, excuse me, oh boy, where'd it go? Sorry, yeah. This is we had 5 people out at the Sam Adams Memorial in Boston. And you see 3 of us with tricorn hats. Again, evoking the ideas of, Samuel Adams and the Revolutionary Patriots. At this location, we got out 700 leaflets in a couple of hours amongst the 5 of us. And there were a few interesting exchanges. There was a fellow that I had seen at the same location 5 days earlier who wouldn't read the leaflet, got into an argument insisting that we had to bomb Iran to keep them from having a nuclear weapon. But when he passed by yesterday, I told him, okay, it's been 5 days and we're still leafleting and we're still alive. Must be working. Then 4 hours later, he comes back after work and he comes and actually has a rational discussion with me and agrees to read the leaflet and take the palm card about the Oasis plan. Then there was another young man who came up to me when I was on the phone after we were done. He said, I've been sitting in this pub reading this leaflet. I really agree with this. And I want to know what more I can do besides just calling my congressman. So I got his email and I'm going to be in touch with him. And it kind of indicates that you don't know the reverberations of what you're doing, that this is having an impact far beyond what you can see. And there was just one other thing I'll relate. There was a lady that saw me for a second time who came up to me and said, I got your leaflet last Friday and I have called my congressman and I want you to know we really appreciate that you're out here doing this. So to wrap up, about altogether, the last 7 days, we've gotten 3,000 of these leaflets out into Boston and we are going to continue the fight.
Thank you, Bill. It's very important that that we are able to see that what you guys are doing. We got to figure out how to get you to. Can you stop sharing your screen?
Yeah.
Go to the top.
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
Thank you. There we go. Pardon me, I'm not the usual technical person for the call today, but thank you everyone who's given your reports. This was excellent. This was definitely a lot for people to chew on, and I want to recommend everyone going out and doing the same, going into the streets, contacting your congressman, talking to people about doing the same, going out and distributing this at many different events and organizations. It's been very fruitful and useful, and it's moralizing to do activities like this. So we are going to, I believe that's all the reports. I'm just double checking to make sure that's all we have. Yes. So those are all the reports that we have from the organizing. We are going to go to the discussion period. I just want to remind everybody, so the next IPC meeting, join us Saturday at the Berlin conference. So we're going to have, let me share my screen with you so you can see this. If you're in Europe, you can join us in the morning at, the time is not here. I'm sorry, I guess the time is not on the website, but in the morning, join us in the morning. We will have the second panel that starts at 2:30. So the IPC, you can join at 2:30. You can register here at theschillerinstitute.com. And you can go between English, the English version and the German version here at the top, if you saw that there. So please register to get the Zoom link if you aren't able to make it in person. But if you are, please register for the in-person and join us. And if you are on some kind of platform on YouTube, oh, I see your hand is raised, Dennis. Are you trying to?
Well, yeah, there's a question for Helga, which I think actually.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Wraps up this whole section, which comes from Carolina and a group of the young organizers in Mexico, but I think it applies to all of the work that's being done. So let me just read that question to you, Helga. It says, Helga, I would like to ask you about some doubts that arose in the last conference we had with the South African ambassador about the Oasis plan. There is a clash of emotions about what is happening in the world. On the one hand, the optimism that spreads the development led by BRICS, and on the other hand, the despair of seeing how, despite the fact that the majority of the world is against the genocide in Gaza, we have not been able to stop it. I believe that the approach of the Oasis Plan project should be linked to a foundation of moral principles of love, that development comes from a need for the general welfare of our people. Helga, do you think it wise that the document of Nicholas of Cusa, De Pace Fidei, could be the basis we need to give that direction and foundation to the Oasis Plan, a principle of love and imago viva Dei?
I mean, that is obviously a question I can only answer with yes, because that particular dialogue of Nikolaus of Cusa is a typical Kusanische pedagogical way of leading people who are absolutely, fighting each other, killing each other, to actually elevate their thinking, to learn to think like godlike philosophers. And I think it's a beautiful dialogue. Naturally, this is touching upon the justified feeling of undescribable hurt, what the Palestinians feel and what they are expressing, that they always say, that there has to be first justice before we can even think about such a development plan to create peace. And that's a difficult question to answer because, I mean, it is obviously like Mr. Kuttab has said, and that is very difficult, in your lifetime, in your experience, to overcome that. But and I'm not claiming that I have an exhaustive answer to that conflict, because obviously justice is what is needed. But then there is another dimension, and that is that the Peace of Westphalia I always refer to, because this was 150 years of religious war in Europe, and the people came to the conclusion that if the fight would continue, nobody would live. And in the time of thermonuclear weapons, where the possible use of nuclear weapons is sort of almost in the air, and there are people talking about the Third World War as if that would be a foregone conclusion that it will take place. Now, if that takes place, there will be absolutely nobody left to enjoy the result. We will all be dead. The human civilization will be wiped out. And in light of that danger, I think that pedagogical help, like that dialogue of Nikolaus of Cusa, is very useful, because what does he start with? After the fall of Constantinople in 1453, if I'm not mistaken, there was I mean, the Muslim side has one view of what happened, but on the side of the Christians, they thought that this was an absolute horrible destruction of everything they believed in. So in that setting, Nikolaus developed this this dialogue where he says he has 17 representatives of different religions and nations who all go and meet with God to ask his advice. And they say, in your name, we are all killing each other. And what can we do? Can you help us? Can you give us a way to look at the situation in a different way? And then God basically addresses them and says, you are all philosophers in your country or in your religion. And as philosophers, you can see that there is only one truth. They say, yes, as philosophers, we can see that, but we are still killing each other. So give us more help. And then God continues and says, but the truth is being interpreted differently by the different prophets. But you can see the difference between what the prophets are saying and what God's word is. So he takes them step by step to a more elevated view, and to recognize that the unity is in God and in mankind, in the one mankind, and in the one religion, which is above all religions. And, in the Peace of Westphalia, if people would not have taken that approach and let them to define the first principle, that for the sake of peace, you have to forget everything what one side did to the other and vice versa. And then the second principle, that for the sake of peace, you have to replace hatred with love, to take into account the interest of the other. So while I completely understand that it's very difficult to think this way, given the fact what is happening, nevertheless, one can also see that unless you are willing to go in this direction of the coincidence of opposites and think in a different way, there will be always a cycle of violence and a cycle of war. And in the age of thermonuclear weapons, that will then end mankind if we don't break out of it. So while I'm not saying this is an exhaustive argument, but I would like to just encourage people to read the De Pace Fide dialogue. And, I think it is important that we find a way of getting out of this horrendous situation. And Kuza's dialogue for sure is a very good pedagogical way to start thinking this way.
Thank you. I actually just found the link and I'm going to include that in the chat for people so that way they can read it. And thank you for the question. And is there anything else, Dennis? No? Okay. So let's continue on to the discussion period. Let me just make an announcement for people who are on YouTube or other platforms. Please go to the schillerinstitute.com. You must register to be part of the discussion. You can, once you register, you'll get the Zoom link, and we'll give people a little bit of time to cross over. So, and with that, let me know when we've cut the stream. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, welcome everyone.